Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. First Amendment attorney and top constitutional law expert Floyd Abrams weighs in on possible prosecution for President Trump.
I think it's a very, very close case.
Plus, grand jurors in the Breonna Taylor case are calling for the impeachment of Kentucky's attorney general.
He played politics.
And accused Kenosha shooter Kyle Rittenhouse ordered to have tighter bail conditions. The photos at a bar that made prosecutors furious. Later, a grand jury's decision to indict the bar owner seen here accused of hitting a sheriff's deputy with his car. The lesser offenses he's facing and why he wasn't indicted for assault. Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmire along with Terri Austin. Former President Trump's impeachment trial in the Senate is set to begin on February 8th. But a lot are wondering if he could also face criminal charges. So, genette Levy spoke with a top constitutional law expert and father of the founder of Law and Crime Network.
Yeah, Brian, this discussion really has nothing to do with impeachment. That is a totally separate proceeding. Now, many people have pointed to that speech on January 6th that President Trump gave, and they say that he incited the crowd and could be charged for it. But First Amendment expert and lawyer Floyd Abrams says the situation may not be that clear-cut.
On January 6th, President Trump claimed before a crowd of tens of thousands that the election had been stolen.
You'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength and you have to be strong.
But President Trump also said,
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Violence followed at the Capitol. To date, dozens have been charged. Some have suggested Trump could face federal charges of inciting insurrection. Floyd Abrams is the country's preeminent First Amendment lawyer. He represented the New York Times at the Supreme Court over publication of the Pentagon Papers and reporter Judith Miller in the CIA leak investigation.
The law on this is a lot less clear than a lot of experts are saying it is. And that's because the Brandenburg case, which is a wonderful speech protecting case.
Brandenburg v. Ohio started in Cincinnati in 1964 when Ku Klux Klan leader Clarence Brandenburg invited a TV station to film a rally. Brandenburg spoke about exacting what he called revengeance against African Americans, Jews, and those who supported them. Brandenburg was convicted of advocating violence under Ohio's syndicalism statute. The case ended up at the U.S. Supreme Court in 1969, where his lawyer argued the statute violated his First Amendment rights.
The film was taken on a remote, private farm in which apparently there is no evidence whatsoever that these people were not invitees present on that farm by authority of the ownership of the farm.
But in this case, it is not someone else contacting the television networks. It is Clarence Brandenburg himself who contacts the television newsman himself.
Brandenburg won, which led to broad protections for speech and the Brandenburg test, which includes evaluating whether speech causes imminent lawless action or is likely to incite such action. In Trump's case, Abrams says,
he was telling them to go, and he would go with them. He never used the words, take down the Capitol, but he used a lot of incendiary language about something which was literally about to occur. I think that there's a really strong argument that there was imminence and likelihood here. I don't know what the answer is. And I'm not sure somebody could prove that the answer was he wanted this to happen, that his intention in saying these things was lawless conduct. And so that's one of the elements. And that's why I think it's a very, very close case.
Abrams says Trump invited his supporters to Washington.
When Liz Cheney said that he lit the match. That's not wrong. It really isn't wrong to say that. He just may not have lit it completely, since it's a match, at the Capitol.
But Abrams says since this is a close case, he doubts Trump will be prosecuted for incitement.
It's a hard case. It can too easily sound like a political case. I doubt if there's going to be appetite to do that. I mean, the people who would want to do that the most are the people he's happiest out of town. I don't see any great public purpose in having a case sure to go to the Supreme Court, which won't be there for another year or so.
And any criminal charges that would come out against the president, his top advisors, or anyone who organized that big rally on January 6th would likely come out of a grand jury investigation by the federal government. Lawyers seem to be split on whether or not that will actually happen. Brian?
Thanks, Anjanette. Joining us today is defense attorney Adam Conta and Terri Austin. Adam, Brandenburg is just one of many First Amendment cases. Do you see this or any other case protecting the president, or do you, like everyone else, are you kind of split as to whether or not he'd be prosecuted?
Yeah, I mean, come on, you just talked to an international expert on this cause, and he said, I don't know, it's a close call. What am I going to say definitively, right? But no, I mean, if you look at what he said, I think what's important here that he didn't mention is it's not just about what you say, it's who you say it to. So this wasn't at a CPAC rally full of conservatives in suits and ties. You got a guy out there dressed as a water buffalo calling himself the Q shaman in a group of people who've been told that the election was stolen from them. And then you say, hey, get out there and get down to the Capitol and I'll see you down there. Yeah, of course he lit the match. And of course he knew what was going to happen. But on the other side of that, I could very easily say, yes, but he said peaceful. You have the right to say what you want. So I think this, all of this, if you look at Brandenburg, it is close. And if it's close as a defense attorney, I think, oh, well, that's wiggle room. That's reasonable doubt. And so I think that this will better be served if this heads to an impeachment trial than a criminal incitement trial. I think this evidence is going to be very impactful, hopefully, to try to stop him from ever becoming an elected official again.
Gotcha.
But I think it would be a very difficult hurdle to find criminal charges here.
I can see that. Terri, real quick, what do you think?
I agree with Floyd Abrams, obviously, and I agree with Adam. I think that impeachment will probably be supported by this information. But I think as far as bringing a separate trial, that's probably not going to happen, and Trump might prevail as far as that goes.
Yeah, we'll see where that goes. Brandenburg is not the only case. Of course, you've got Hess v. Indiana, US v. Watts, all that plays in a part. But we'll keep following that if it does actually go to trial. Thank you both. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, courtroom claims against the former president and his allies grow. Plus, why grand jurors in the Breonna Taylor case are calling for the Kentucky Attorney General to be impeached. Next. Welcome back. Legal battles over the Trump presidency continue to mount. As Terri Austin explains, there's a new claim against one of Trump's right-hand men.
Brian, former Trump attorney and New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani is being sued for defamation by Dominion Voting Systems. The company alleges that Giuliani knowingly made false statements that Dominion stole the election even after he was sent a cease and desist letter from the company. The company stated that the harm to Dominion's business and reputation is unprecedented and irreparable because of how fervently millions of people believe it. Dominion is asking the court for $1.3 billion in damages. Thus far, Giuliani has not responded to the lawsuit.
Thank you, Terri. And now to Kentucky, where 3 of the grand jurors in the Breonna Taylor case are calling for the impeachment of Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron. Cameron was tapped as the special prosecutor for Taylor's death. She was killed by Louisville police officers executing a warrant on her home last March. The grand jurors were randomly selected in Jefferson County and heard 3 days of testimony in September. They only returned an indictment for former Detective Brett Hankinson for recklessly firing into a neighbor's apartment. Cameron spoke at a presser immediately afterwards, and the 3 grand jurors now say he misrepresented the findings to the nation.
We presented all of the information, and they ultimately made a determination about whether to charge. In this instance, they decided to indict Detective Hankinson. Well, what my role as the special prosecutor in this case was to provide the information and facts to the grand jury. Detective Cosgrove and Sergeant Mattingly were justified in returning fire because they were fired upon.
The grand jury signed a petition accusing Cameron of abuse of office, breach of duties, and failing to comply with ethics. The petition will go to the Kentucky House of Representatives, and former federal prosecutor Gene Rossi says it should be looked at closely.
He gave the public, he ran his mouth and gave the public the impression that they had presented homicide or manslaughter charges for all three officers. That was a lie. And that's damning that he played politics with the grand jury process. And he took over that case, evidently because he wanted to take it away from politics. But he injected it into the court, into the grand jury room.
Couldn't have said it better, Gene Rossi. Back for analysis is defense attorney Adam Conte and co-host Terri Austin. Terry, this is a first for me, a grand jury looking to impeach an AG. But here, I'm all for it. What do you make of the allegations, though, made by these jurors?
Well, I think it makes sense to impeach him or do something. There should be some action against him. What they're claiming is that, he took part in making this insurrection on January 6th happen by having these incendiary robocalls. I don't know if that actually happened, but if it did, then he should be impeached for that. He also obviously, as Gene Rossi was saying, he breached the public trust because he misrepresented to the country what the grand jury was actually saying. And for that, I do think he breached his duty. And for that, I do think he has some ethical obligation that he should be prosecuted for, or at least he should be sanctioned for.
All right, so the robocalls are maybe the connection to this January 6th thing, because that was kind of making me scratch my head. Adam, breach of public trust, abuse of office, misrepresentation, those all make sense. Do you see those charges being strong? And then kind of almost, can you comment on that January 6th part too?
Sure. Briefly, I love this because there's no accountability for prosecutors who don't present a case to the grand jury in an appropriate way. So if nothing else, this brings light to the very real issue of the amount of power and discretion prosecutors have in charging these incredibly serious crimes. So let's take a look. If these grand jurors are saying, whoa, we weren't told what we should have been told. That's incredibly important. And I love that we're taking a look at it here. As for the robocalls in January 6th, listen, he's an official. He is part of the Republican Attorney General Association, and they put out really incendiary robocalls telling marchers to go down to the Capitol. So he's got to take accountability of that too. He's one of the 9 members of the board for that.
Yeah, it makes sense. We just got to see where this goes. There's some interesting allegations, and from day one, we said this didn't sound right when he stepped out in that presser. Thank you both. Coming up on Law&Crime Daily, the sex trafficking sting operation that rescued dozens of missing children. Plus, while Kyle Rittenhouse is ordered to not have contact with known white supremacists, a judge is ruling after the break. A judge has ordered the accused Kenosha shooter to not associate with white supremacists or drink alcohol while out on bail. Now 18-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse is charged with killing 2 people and injuring a third at a protest last August. Prosecutors say Rittenhouse was seen drinking at a bar in Wisconsin just 90 minutes after his arraignment on January 5th. He could legally drink there because he was with his mother. According to court documents, Rittenhouse posed for photos with a group of men flashing the OK hand gesture, an adopted symbol of white power for hate groups. Prosecutors say Rittenhouse was singing the Proud Boy anthem and drank 3 beers while at the bar. A Kenosha County judge has now modified the conditions of Rittenhouse's $2 million bond, ordering him not to consume alcohol or have contact with any person or group known to harm or threaten others based on their race, beliefs, or gender. Back to talk spirits and supremacists are Adam Conte and Terri Austin. Terry, this all stemmed from Rittenhouse legally drinking at a bar. I gotta emphasize that it was legally done, and posing with white supremacists. Like, I'm not a fan of them, but it seems legal. Is this decision too far by the judge, in your opinion?
You know what, Brian? While I think Rittenhouse should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, I do think that this decision went a bit too far. Look, I think it makes sense that he shouldn't be fraternizing with white supremacists. That's what caused the issue in the first place. But I think it's going to be hard to keep him from doing that. How do you show that someone is a racist or isn't a racist? And the other issue, as far as the drinking is concerned, he was not breaking the law. His crime had nothing to do with his drinking. So I do think that that's overreaching. And in fact, the judge should not have said that he can't be allowed to drink, especially if he's doing it legally with his mother.
Yeah, Adam, we see this in our cases. DWI, the judge says you can't drink afterwards. If it's a hate crime, maybe there's some other additional requirements on your bail or your bond. But this, there's no association with that. I mean, at this point, say, okay, maybe he's not allowed to drive. Maybe he's not allowed to go to a strip club. All things he can legally do at 18. Am I just being ridiculous here?
I think you guys are out of your mind. We see clients with minor cases all the time, like you just mentioned, drugs, DWI, they're not allowed to drink. It's part of the conditions because it makes them a less dangerous member of society. It reduces the risk of having them out in society. This guy killed 2 people by accident, didn't kill a third, tried to kill 3 people. And a judge says, hey, I don't think you should drink because clearly you're going out and associating with white supremacists and getting boozed up 90 minutes after arraignment. I think the judge is fine for saying no booze on this guy. This is such a case of 2 systems of justice that this guy is out on bail to begin with. I cannot believe you 2 think that he should be able to drink on top of this. I
agree. I agree with the bond, but none of my homicide clients are not allowed to drink alcohol when they're out. That was the only point that I was making, but I agree with you on the bond there, Adam. When we come back, shocking video captured a bar owner apparently hitting a deputy with his car. So why did a grand jury decline to indict? We break it down just ahead. Authorities in Los Angeles say 33 missing children have now been safely located and rescued. The multi-agency investigation known as Operation Los Angeles found the children during a human trafficking operation. The FBI says 8 of the children had been sexually exploited. 2 of the children were rescued multiple times from a known commercial sex trafficking location. 1 suspect was arrested on state charges, and agents say they're helping to start new investigations. Singer Trey Songz has been released from jail following an altercation during the AFC Championship football game in Kansas City. The singer, whose real name is Tremaine Alden Neverson, is accused of punching a police officer and putting them in a headlock. Kansas City police say fans complained about a man not wearing a mask, and the man then refused to leave when asked by private security and officers. That's when Trey Songz allegedly attacked the officer. Charges have not yet been filed. A New York City bar owner arrested for violating COVID-19 protocols will not face charges for allegedly hitting a sheriff's deputy with his SUV. A Staten Island grand jury indicted Daniel Presti of Mac's Public House for unlicensed sale of alcohol and running an unlicensed bottle club. Presti defied city and state orders denying patrons from entering his bar, declaring an autonomous zone. Surveillance video from the bar on December 6 shows Presti running to his Jeep and driving away with a deputy clinging onto the hood.
Drove 100 yards with the law enforcement officer clinging to the hood for his life. You don't attack them. You don't attack a law enforcement officer who's doing his or her job. And when you have someone who drives their car into someone, could have killed him, hospitalizes him, how dare you? What signal are you sending?
The Staten Island District Attorney says Presti opted to testify during the grand jury proceedings. Presti said publicly he did not realize it was officers that were after him. He had been arrested on charges of assault, menacing, and reckless driving, fleeing a police officer. He now only faces minor offenses. Back for analysis is Adam Conta and Terri Austin. Now, I practice in Brooklyn. I think I've said this multiple times on this show. I know Adam Conta personally from seeing him in the courts. But Adam, you started your legal career as a public defender in Staten Island. I thought this was crazy that they couldn't indict an officer. You seem to think it's not as crazy. Why is that?
Well, this is an age-old game of rock, paper, scissors for Staten Island. And Staten Island's a wonderful place. I did start my career there, and I love Staten Island in a lot of reasons. They're incredibly conservative. They love police and firemen there. A lot of police and firemen in the NYPD live on Staten Island. So, but let's take a look at the history of Staten Island justice for just a moment. Eric Garner, the biggest case in maybe New York City recent history, couldn't get a cop indicted there for choking him out and essentially murdering him. An innocent black man just selling a loose cigarette. What we've now learned is that the only thing that the grand jurors of Staten Island love more than cops is a conservative white guy who's a small business owner. Because if this was Eric Garner behind the wheel of that car, there would not be this story. There would be a black man indicted for attempted murder on an officer, case closed, no questions asked. I do not doubt that for 1 second. So this tells me that not only are there two systems of justice in America, there's a very tiered system of justice in Staten Island, unfortunately.
That's how I see it. Now, Terry, as bizarre as I may perceive this is 100% legal, right? Like, this can happen.
Well, yes, it can happen. And while I love Governor Cuomo, I do agree with Adam. I think we have two systems of justice here. And obviously, the grand jury believed Daniel Presti. He didn't think that these were police officers he was running down. He thought he was trying to save his life, and the grand jury believed that. And they said to themselves, look, I think your license should really be up for debate because you were breaking COVID-19 rules. But frankly, we don't think that you were trying to run down a police officer. So, you know, I think things happen differently in Staten Island for different people.
Absolutely. Adam, Terry, thank you. And thank you for joining us here at Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.